match number 3 here at Freelance Underground's Baderbrawl 3 Blackout at the Brewery. Danhausen taking on Sensational Stevie Pierce. And Sterling, these two know a lot about each other.
Very familiar with each other. Kind of started around the same time. Danhausen, a background with working with some of the wrestlers here in the area. But Sensational one, as displayed there, Stevie Pierce, trained by Brian Kendrick. Got a lot of tutelage from Brian Kendrick in his time.
No doubt, and Danhausen. I want to call him Vanhausen because of Milhouse from The Simpsons. But Danhausen, trained by Jimmy Jacobs. So they have got, I would say, on the weirdness level, on the unorthodox level, both these guys pretty equal as far as trainers are concerned.
They rank up there. Stevie Pierce returning from a trip to Mexico, recent tour, doing a lot of work down there with the DTU promotion. A lot of training from the lucha style all the way to the extreme style as well. Well traveled all around.
And Stevie Pierce doesn't take too kindly to Danhausen's face paint, says he's just trying to cover up his ugly face. Kirby, you know full well Stevie Pierce very proud of his appearance.
Absolutely. I saw Danhausen look into Stevie's mirror earlier, and I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't see a reflection.
Let's see what happens here. There's Stevie Pierce trying to go for the arm, but Danhausen immediately cutting him off, not letting him go into any wrist lock or an arm bar or anything. And these two know each other so well. I expect a lot of counters, a game of human chess right here, Sterling.
Someone should tell Danhausen, you got to keep the ugliness on the inside, not paint it on the outside.
Well, he's got Pierce down on the mat now after that headlock takeover, and Danhausen might be served well to try to keep Pierce on the ground as much as possible in this contest.
Pierce likes to constantly look into the mirror because he loves the reflection he sees. Perfection, Jimmy, perfection.
Calls himself the most aesthetically pleasing wrestler of all time, but Danhausen right now showing that he may have Pierce's number in the wrestling department, maybe looking for a Mexican surfboard. This is a move I have not seen in a long time, if he's able to pull it off. See, the size difference isn't much different between these two. Pierce has a little bit of a height advantage, but I'd say the weight and strength advantage, these two are about equal.
Danhausen looking to stretch all the muscles in Stevie Pierce.
And just the pressure putting on the shoulders, this Mexican surfboard, the back of the legs, the knees. Unless you're doing your DDP yoga, this hurts right here.
You mentioned how aesthetically pleasing Stevie Pierce is. You're getting a good glimpse here, Jimmy, of exactly what he's talking about.
And Pierce looked like he might have gone to the eye. He went to the eye to get out of that. Pierce, oh, look at that running forearm there in the corner, and Danhausen coming off the top. Pierce, he don't know where he is. Staggering in the middle. Oh! And not the first time we've seen that drop kick from the top this evening, but it's working. It's working for whoever throws it, so hey, why not?
But seriously, Jimmy, why does he wear that face paint? What is he trying to do with that face paint? Is he trying to just portray just ugly individuals?
I did talk to Danhausen before the show, and it looks like firstly, I'm going to say he's going for a fireman's carry. Oh, he got caught. Hung over the top rope by Stevie Pierce, but back to the face paint. Danhausen heavily influenced by his favorite musical acts, his favorite bands growing up, all which started small, went on to become big. Danhausen right now, maybe in his opinion, maybe not in mine, but his opinion, starting small, on his way up. He has only one direction to go, he says.
Stevie here taking best advantage of that 5 count in the corner, wanting to extract the air out of the lungs of Danhausen. It's just smart strategy from Stevie Pierce.
Definitely very smart, not afraid to take a shortcut or two. And with it, the confidence that he has hard into the corner with that beautiful Irish whip. Danhausen just bounced right back. But the confidence that Pierce has, Kirby, would you agree that Pierce would be the one who might use a mind game or two, but would he be hesitant to do so because of the face paint?
No, absolutely not. Stevie's going to do everything he can. Stevie, let's not forget, is also the freelance champion. That title is not on the line tonight, but Stevie still can't afford to suffer a loss because of the championship and just because of how much he thinks of himself. There's no way he's letting things happen like that tonight.
Look at this, Stevie Fierce walking the ropes. Great balance here, but he's got that mirror and
oh, brutal!
after all that, a scratch right down the front. I was thinking, you know, like if he uses that mirror, we've got a potential disqualification at the referees. Look at that. That's mind games right there.
I don't care who you are. That did he just hit?
Caught him with the go to sleep. He sure did. GTS, but Fierce had the wherewithal to get himself out of the ring. That is one of Danhausen's favorites, that GTS.
Looked a little bit more like head games than mind games, but sure.
Danhausen not allowing, this is smart, not allowing Fierce to get much of a breather. Both these guys are in excellent cardio condition.
Stevie's been known to hit that Photoshop out of nowhere, right on the cranium of his opponent, incapacitating for the 1-2-3. That's how he's gained the Freelance Championship.
And Danhausen just going to work over the guardrail here right on the outside. A referee pleading for these guys to get in the ring and hard into the guardrail. Danhausen getting a little bit nasty, as we've seen, compared to the past couple matches. These guys have spilled out.
This is exactly what Stevie wanted. He wanted to get into the head of Danhausen. He doesn't care how much face paint he has on or any of that stuff. He cares about getting into the head of him. That way he can take advantage of him, just like he did right there.
Danhausen this time hard into the barricade. And these guys are back and forth, back and forth. It's almost as if they know a lot about each other.
They grew up in the business around the same time, both of these athletes, but have never crossed paths. This is their first time in the squared circle, and Stevie just
taking time. This could be a mistake. Not staying on Danhausen. Danhausen, a lot of respect for Stevie Fierce for holding that championship, that Freelance Championship.
You say mistake, I say strategy. He's getting inside the head of Danhausen. This is exactly what Danhausen had planned for. But obviously here in this contest, Stevie taking advantage of him.
Maybe thinking powerbomb, maybe thinking pile driver. Still taking a lot of time. I know, Sterling, you say it's strategy, but it did allow Danhausen the time.
Oh!
That beautiful DDT. That devotion DDT, he calls it, but he's unable to capitalize, unable to get the pin right here. You got to wonder if Danhausen was able to get the pin immediately, would we have a winner of this match? And would Danhausen be in contention for the Freelance Championship? Low suicide dive, and Danhausen, he's got to keep up this high-impact offense if he wants to win, Kirby.
You know what? I am seeing a very different side of Danhausen. I've been watching him here for a couple years. He went down to California for a while, and now he's back here in the Chicagoland area. And now we're seeing this mask. We're seeing this transformation. And not only in the face paint, but in how he's acting in the ring. He's got a lot more of a vicious streak going on right now, and I like it. I think it serves him well.
Well, Stevie Fierce just slingshotted Danhausen backwards. He hit the crown of the back of his head right on the corner of the apron. I think Fierce needs to get Danhausen in the ring.
Stevie always known for capitalizing on those that want to take high risks in his matchup. He knows exactly when to pick his spots and when to seize the opportunity. We could be looking at a Photoshop here.
He's feeling Photoshop here. This would be the perfect follow-up. High knee. Maybe thinking German suplex. Danhausen hits that release suplex. Fierce getting to his feet. There's that running uppercut by Danhausen. The wake-up call. This could be it. 2 count only for Danhausen on the wake-up call. But Danhausen still has, actually, you know what? He's hit all of his top moves. At least that he told me about. Danhausen's going to have to reach into his bag of tricks if he wants to pull off a victory here against Fierce or hit one of his 3 top moves once again.
I'm scared for Stevie here because knowing this is a non-title affair, it may get into the head of him. You know, from a strategy standpoint, he knows most of the time his title's on the line. He's got to bring his A game. Hopefully didn't. 2 count there. Wait a second.
Vertical suplex. Oh, he's got it. He's got this chancery. He's got it. Referee says no, but Danhausen can't stay in this long. Oh, he's got way more torque on it, really pulling back on it. Danhausen in a world of trouble here. Look at the bridge. The bridge, the athleticism, the quads, the strength, the back power that you have to put on the bridge like Fierce is doing here. He's really got the neck torqued, but Danhausen had made it to the bottom rope. Fierce showing some good sportsmanship or immediately releasing the hold, but that had to have done a ton of damage to Danhausen.
He had that cinched in right across the throat. I thought that was it for Danhausen. Somehow able to make it to the ropes. The crowd kind of getting behind Danhausen here.
It's almost as if the more torque, the more pull that Fierce had on that one, the harder that Danhausen worked to get to that rope, and frankly, it worked out for him. Oh, here we go. Double underhook. What are you thinking?
Uh-oh, flips him through.
Oh! Drives that headbutt right at the base of the jaw. Danhausen, he's thinking GTS again. No doubt if he hits it, it's over. Backslide to counter out. 2 count only. Oh, he's got to be thinking Photoshop soon. Could not get the double underhook. Danhausen fights it off. Look at these series of reversals. Devotion DDT, he's thinking it. If he hits this, stuck him. He stuck him clean in the middle.
That could be it for the champ.
This got to be it. Oh, 2 count only. Stevie Fierce somehow finds a way to kick out, following the Devotion DDT. And Danhausen has got to be feeling tons of frustration. His top moves are not getting the job done, Kirby.
Absolutely, you can see it in him, and right now he's mocking Stevie Fierce, but that's not what he needs to do. What he needs to do is get back on his man and try to finish this match.
Oh, Danhausen may be thinking Photoshop. What a reversal this would be.
Beautiful reversal.
That's got to be it on the Photoshop. 1, 2, 3.
Finish.
Your freelance champion, Stevie Fierce, comes away with the victory. And I think he will be partying this evening, even if it's just himself looking at himself in the mirror.
That's why he's sensational, Jimmy.